April the 30th, 1943. Dawn breaks over the coast near Huelva, Spain, and a fisherman spots something floating face down in the surf. It's a body of a British officer, fully uniformed, a locked briefcase chained to his wrist. Within 2 weeks, the contents of that briefcase would help decide the fate of the Allied invasion of Europe. But here is the twist. The officer washing ashore, Captain Acting Major William Martin of the Royal Marines, never existed. He was a fabrication built from a dead man's body, a stack of forged letters, and a love story invented by British intelligence. His mission: to convince Adolf Hitler that the Allies were about to strike Greece and Sardinia, not the real target, Sicily. The idea wasn't new. Back in September 1939, Rear Admiral John Godfrey, head of Britain's Naval Intelligence Division, circulated a document called the Trout Memo, 51 Ways to Deceive the Enemy, written as if deception were a kind of fly fishing. Idea number 28 was blunt: plant a corpse with false papers where the enemy would find it. Historians believe the hand behind that idea belonged to Godfrey's assistant, a young officer named Ian Fleming, the future creator of James Bond. Fleming admitted he'd borrowed the concept from a 1937 novel. For 3 years the idea sat on a shelf. Then, in 1943, 2 intelligence officers picked it back up. Those 2 officers were RAF Flight Lieutenant Charles Comendelli of MI5 and Royal Navy Intelligence Officer Ewan Montagu. Together they built what would become Operation Mincemeat. Their first problem was gruesome and practical. They needed a corpse, one that could plausibly have drowned after an aircraft went down at sea. On the 24th of January, 1943, they found their answer. Glyndwr Michael, a homeless Welshman, was discovered dead in an abandoned warehouse near King's Cross Station in London. He had ingested phosphorus-based rat poison. Whether by suicide or accident, no one could say for certain. He had no family to ask questions, no one to notice he was gone. In death, this forgotten man was about to become one of the most consequential figures of the Second World War, under a name that was never his own. Comendelli and Montagu dressed the body in the uniform of a Royal Marines officer and gave him a new identity: Captain Acting Major William Martin. Then came the details that would make him real: an identity card, identity discs, a St. Christopher medal, theater ticket stubs, bills from a London club. And sewn into the lining of believability, the single most important object of the entire operation: a locked briefcase, chained to his wrist, containing a forged letter from one real British general, Sir Archibald Nye, to another, Sir Harold Alexander. Buried in bureaucratic language, the letter implied that the invasion everyone expected in Sicily was in fact a diversion, that the true targets were Greece and Sardinia. It was a lie, dressed in the paperwork of truth, carried by a man who could never be interrogated, never break under pressure, never change his story. But a briefcase alone might look staged, so Martin needed a life. In his wallet, intelligence officers placed love letters from a fiancée named Pam, along with a swimsuit photograph taken by the River Thames in reality, a picture of an MI5 clerk named Jean Leslie. There was a receipt for an engagement ring, £53, 10 shillings, purchased from a Bond Street jeweler. 2 ticket stubs for a West End show called Strike a New Note suggested a final night out before shipping off to war. Every object was chosen to answer a question the Germans hadn't even thought to ask yet. Who was this man, really? By the time they finished, William Martin felt more human than most people who actually existed. On the 17th of April, 1943, the body was packed in dry ice inside a canister disguised as scientific equipment and driven north to Scotland. 2 days later, it was loaded aboard the submarine HMS Seraph. The crew was told only that the canister held secret meteorological instruments. Not one of them knew what or who was really inside. The Seraph sailed south, threading past enemy patrols toward the Spanish coast near Huelva. The location wasn't random. British intelligence knew a particular kind of trap, needed a particular kind of trapper waiting on the other end. In the early hours of April 30th off the coast of Huelva, the submarine surfaced. The canister was opened, and the body of Major Martin was released into the sea, drifting toward shore on the tide. Huelva was chosen deliberately. It was home to Adolf Kloss, a German Abwehr spy described as efficient, ruthless, and crucially credulous. Spain was officially neutral, but local officials in the region were openly sympathetic to Germany, and that sympathy was the crack the British planned to exploit. A Spanish naval officer, Lieutenant Colonel Ramon Pardo Suarez, took custody of the briefcase and quietly handed it to the Abwehr for about an hour, just long enough for German agents to slit open the sealed envelopes, photograph every page, and reseal them as though they'd never been touched. Abwehr officer Karl Erich Kuhlenthal personally flew the photographs to Berlin. From there, the deception moved through the machinery of German intelligence, climbing the chain of command one desk at a time. British codebreakers, reading Germany's own encrypted signals through the Ultra program, waited to see if the trap had worked. On the 12th of May, 1943, the message came through. The false intelligence had been circulated to German commanders as genuine. Weeks of planning, a stolen identity, a fabricated love affair, all of it had worked exactly as designed. Somewhere in Berlin, officers were now redrawing the defensive map of southern Europe, based entirely on the pocket contents of a dead man. On the 14th of May, 1943, Adolf Hitler met with Admiral Karl Dönitz and made his judgment. Sicily was not the real target. Greece and Sardinia had to be reinforced. The order rippled outward immediately. The veteran 1st Panzer Division was pulled from France and sent to Salonika, Greece. 7 additional infantry divisions followed toward Greece, with roughly 10 more redirected into the wider Balkans. On Sardinia, German troop strength doubled to around 10,000 men by late June, with fighter squadrons relocated to reinforce the island. Meanwhile, the real target, Sicily, sat comparatively undefended, its garrison weaker than it should have been, its high command still watching the wrong horizon. A single body, a handful of forged letters, and thousands of German soldiers were now marching in the wrong direction, guarding beaches the Allies had never intended to touch. On the 9th of July, 1943, the real invasion began. Operation Husky put Allied troops ashore on Sicily, and the difference deception had made was staggering. British planners had braced for roughly 10,000 casualties in the first week alone. The actual toll was closer to 1/7 of that. They had feared losing 300 ships. They lost 12. The campaign was projected to take 90 days. It was over in 38. Sicily fell within just over a month, its defenders thinned out by an enemy chasing ghosts in Greece and Sardinia. Remarkably, even after Allied boots were already on Sicilian sand, Hitler reportedly still believed a larger assault on Greece was coming, clinging to a story that had never been true in the first place. The ripples went further than Sicily. On the 13th of July, 1943, Hitler suspended the German offensive at Kursk on the Eastern Front, the largest tank battle in history, partly because he still believed troops needed to stay available for a Balkan invasion that Mincemeat had invented. Historians still debate exactly how much weight the deception carried in that decision, alongside ultra-intelligence and Germany's own strategic assessments. But the fact that it's part of the conversation at all speaks to the scale of what 2 intelligence officers, a dead man, and a fictional love story achieved. Historian Michael Howard would later call it, quite simply, perhaps the most successful single deception operation of the entire war. For decades, the man behind Major Martin remained an official secret. It wasn't until 1996 that amateur historian Roger Morgan uncovered the paper trail in Britain's Public Record Office, confirming what few had known. The hero who fooled Hitler was Glyndwr Michael, a homeless man with no family and no war record, who never wore a uniform in life. In 1997, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission added a line to his gravestone in Hulva. Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin, R.M. Ewan Montagu later told the story himself in a book, The Man Who Never Was, written over a single weekend, selling 2 million copies. A man who left no mark in life had, in death, helped change the course of a